Welcome, everyone, to episode 15 of the Pinnacle Combat Sports Podcast. I'm Jim, and my boy Dan's here as always after a long night of fights. Dan, how you doing?
Yeah, it's Chama. I'm pretty good. How are you?
It's Chama.
It's Chama. I'm telling you, I'm gonna use that for everything now.
I'm looking forward to
Guy's
that.
the man. That guy is the man. Yep.
Oh, man. What a night, huh? What a night.
It really was a great night of fights.
So before we get into it, you know, it's funny. You weren't boasting, but you were like, oh, I might have all the right picks for the prelims.
I was on a good streak there for a moment.
And then the main card came and something happened. Everything flipped.
It's Chama for me. But no, it was but that's what's good about that, you know, like no matter what you pick and all that, like the best part is just good fights presenting themselves, and it doesn't really matter if you pick it right or wrong. It's about that. And it's like, man, there were tons of performances we can talk about throughout that card, huh? I mean, unreal. I mean, especially the prelims, Jim.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get into that eventually, but I mean, there's just so much talent in this card. It's one of those cards where I feel like you could look at it a few years from now and they'll be like, wow, just look at the names on the card, not knowing what they'll become. Like there's a lot of names that are earlier in that card that you just don't really know. And one of them for sure is Payton Talbott. We'll get to him, but Jesus, man, like.
Well, we do that now. Whenever we, have one of our throwback episodes and we go back to an old UFC fight card, and we're like, geez, look at the prelims. This was an amazing card, and we had no idea at the time,
It's funny. It's become one of my favorite things to start looking at now, because I remember there's one of those cards where you'd see like Duplessis on the prelims, you see Strickland on the prelims. It's like, wow, that's two middleweight champs right there on the prelims. And you're like watching through and you're like, wow, there was multiple other people from other weight classes. And you just look at that card like, wow. So I think you could be looking at a similar thing. And like we talked about, I'm a huge Diego Lopez fan. We'll get into it, but it's like, man, the potential that dude has is just.
Yeah.
Well, he has very little weakness, if any.
Well, let's start. Let's start with the main event. And I mean, I don't know. Where do you? What can you say? Like literally, like this guy has done more than anybody has ever done single-handedly in the last 3 years, and probably in most sports, besides maybe like Shohei Ohtani, right? Like he's like at a different level.
Yeah, because he's not betting on the game he's playing in. But
oh
no, but sorry, I had to take that easy one. But no, but
that one. That was an assist by me.
I was waiting for it. I was like, oh, home run derby, okay. This is good for almost July.
Yeah, that was a softball.
No. But when you look at like a guy like Pereira, it's just. I think they said, what is he beaten already? 5 former champions.
Mm-hmm.
I think they said something like that.
Yep.
And it's just like, so he had coincidentally enough, he had a toe injury in his own right going into UFC 300 that wasn't quite checked, and then it still probably hasn't healed because I think he broke it again last night off that head kick that he landed off of Yuri. He's just there's what can you say about something like just all the talents there? It's just his persona, like he doesn't have to say much. His persona is just it's something that's different than anything I think we've ever seen in the UFC.
Yeah, and with that toe injury too, he's asking Dana White for the next opportunity. He doesn't care. He wants to go again. Yeah, he's like, I'll fight as soon as you need me.
He's like I said, regardless of what you think is pound for pound, regardless of what you think is the best fighter in UFC, that's not what I'm talking about. As far as the biggest name in UFC right now is Alex Pereira. And if you argue that, I feel like, I don't know. I just don't know what you're watching. Like,
well,
look what he's done.
Those people are
We're talking about right now.
Yeah, they're just talking about people they like. Okay, yeah, you like, yeah. A lot of people might have rather seen Conor McGregor lose tonight because that's probably what would have happened. But And that's fine. Conor McGregor's great. That, like we talked about before, as much as we could talk bad about Conor McGregor, he always brings that superstardom, like superstar energy to every fight that he's on, which would have been amazing tonight. But dude, come on, man. Like, the performance we saw by Alex Pereira last night was unmatched. Unmatched. There's no one else. There's not many people in the sport. There might be one or two guys that are doing things that he's like Islam Makhachev, for example, is one of them, right? Just finishing absolute killers every time. But him taking short notice fights, saving cards, changing people's tires on the side of the road, doing side quests. Like, this guy's
He's
amazing.
walking different lines.
Yeah.
He's trying to get 100% clear on the map. You know, when you play a video game, you're trying to get 100%. He's trying to get 100%.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I'm not helping that guy fix his tire. I'm not doing that. So when you see something like that, you're like, okay, he's just like a. But he truly is like a special talent, man.
Yeah.
You're watching it, it's just like, man. I don't know. I know it's like they have a history and everything, so we can get into it and all that. And
yeah. And so
you watch it.
Sorry. What I was telling you on the phone earlier. Apparently his coach noticed Yuri in the back before the fight practicing his defense for the calf kicks, and noticed that every time he would do it, he would lower his right hand. So he brought this to Alex's attention, and they both said, well, we should explore the high kick. And we all know how that ended. So these are, not only is he a talent just physically and athletically, but he's also at least him and his team together as a team is just, they're smart. They know what they're looking for. They're trying to find every opportunity they can to get ahead, which is what you need at that championship level.
Absolutely. And you have a guy like Glover, who was, believe it or not, he was the main training partner of Chuck Liddell back in the day. So if you think about that, and just the time, and it was kind of unfortunate because I don't think Glover Teixeira ever got his right due, because he was always having visa issues when he was like pretty much in the prime of his career. So you kind of always wondered how that would have went if he had been fighting because he was an absolute monster.
Yeah.
And then you get that guy as your mentor, and then you're also kind of, I mean, if you're going to pick your own weakness, he would say it himself. His biggest weakness would be, wrestling defense, wrestling offense, just wrestling in general, jiu-jitsu, because he comes from a kickboxing background. So his stand-up's fine. Doesn't have a ton he needs to learn there. It's just more all the other parts of it. And the Glover's just phenomenal at those things. So it was just like, it really was a perfect fit in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just, I mean, now you just, every single time that you're hearing he's going to fight, you're captivated now. He's unreal. He's one of the biggest names that he's just going to go down as like, it's like legendary status, the way he's been doing things. Like you said, short notice fights, and the way he's stopping people. It's, I mean, unprecedented. I don't think there's a fighter in UFC that's had the type of career he's had, which is crazy to say, because there's been so many different versions of that, right?
Like Anderson, John Jones, like we've seen really dominant, great fighters, but he's something different. He's something special.
For sure.
And you know what's weird about him too is like when a fighter gets that dominant, a lot of times they'll have a ton of haters, and I feel like he doesn't have any haters. I feel like everybody loves him.
Very few, it seems. Yeah. No, that's a good point. That's true.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's just like, what more can you say, man? It was a perfect fight by him. And he really didn't give any respect too, which was crazy to see, I feel. Because I understand that there might not be that much of a feeling out process when it's a rematch, but in terms of the danger that both present, and then to have Pereira not give very much at all any respect in the striking, because it seemed right away he had no. He was not. I don't even know how to word it. He just seemed
not
like he
cautious at all.
Not at all. But he never put himself in danger. Yeah, maybe he took a couple shots, but it wasn't anything. He was not in danger in that first round.
No.
And the way he ended that round, it's like he was just. It was just a combination of things where I feel like he's probably doing better homework and more homework on top of, like you said, the corner he has and the camp he has, and then just like that skill, man, just to trust that power and he is something different, man.
So
he's unreal.
Where do you think this leaves Yuri? I mean, Yuri posted something after. He said he must evolve or he won't fight again. So
Yuri beats everybody at 205, bro. He beats everybody else.
Yeah,
the talent's not the problem.
Right. Well,
I just think it literally. I'm sorry. I just think it literally is just Pereira being at another level than anyone that he possibly could be fighting.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's you're just running into that. You're in the wrong era if you want to be the guy. That's all.
Yeah, to me, the only other question mark at 205 is Ankalaev. But
sure.
That's
sure.
it. And I'm yeah, that's the only other question mark for me. I don't think Jamal Hill will. He's another one, but I don't think he has nothing again. I hate saying bad things about these amazing fighters, but
physical skill and all that. He definitely has a physical ability to beat anyone. But I don't love the way he dealt with his loss, where you just got to kind of I understand there's a lot going on, but you got to kind of take out the chin and move on, and try to become better as a result, instead of just acting like it wasn't. It was all as opposed, I just, like I said, I don't agree with the way he's dealing with it.
Yeah.
But as far as Ankalaev can definitely beat Prochazka, and Jamal Hill can definitely beat Prochazka. So I would say those are probably the only two names I would think Pereira is going to have to really deal with. Everyone else is going to be, I'm not just knocked down by those two guys. I don't think you're getting by those two guys, because that's how good those guys are. It's no knock on them. When we talk about Pereira, I just think Alex Pereira is just something different than these other guys right now.
You know what's something I don't like, though? I don't like how fast people are for the weight division change and fighting for another title. Like, I agree with Dana White on this. And, like, dude, he's been here 3 years. He's won the championship in 2 different weight divisions. He never defended the middleweight championship, and he's defended this one twice now. You have, and especially a division like light heavyweight. Honestly, like, there's not many more fights that he'd have to dominate and win for me to actually think that he should go to heavyweight. So I'm not saying he has to beat everybody, but, like, I think he should have to go through Jamal Hill and Ankalaev at least, if not Blachowicz or Blachowicz. Like, those 3, like, if he wins in dominating fashion in those 3 fights, then absolutely send him to heavyweight and give him John Jones right away.
Sure,
like,
sure. If that's what it is, yeah.
I get that they want a legendary superstar. They're trying to build, him as well as the brand of UFC, and it helps everybody, and I agree with that. But I think you would agree, like, as a purist, you want to see that, that there isn't a contender before they give them the prize of going up for that next title, And we won't know.
Oh.
We won't know if there's a contender unless you give them the fight. You got to give these guys, like, Ankalaev's won his last 12 fights. You got to give him a shot, like, you have to give him that shot.
And he's had that one draw and that's it. But no, he's definitely the guy at that weight to fight next.
If you're Ankalaev, wouldn't you rather fight the best than just, like, have Alex Pereira go up and then you not fight the best and then you have, like, this title, but you're like, well, I didn't really fight the best to get it. It's kind of like, sure, it's like Aspinall, right? Like, he fought and he won the interim title, but that's not really going to feel like the biggest prize until he beats John Jones. And I feel if Alex Pereira went up right now to heavyweight and Ankalaev beat whoever for the championship in light heavyweight, the vacant title, I feel like he'll always have that something missing where he's like, well, I didn't technically beat the best 205 pounder. And I want that, like these guys are competitive,
Oh yeah. And there's like, regardless of whether you agree with the way, like what fans say or what media says or what blah, 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 fill in the blank. But any of those people that say anything about that, there might be some truth to what they're saying. So when they say that, like, oh, this guy needs that shot, which I feel like at 205, Ankalaev is that name. If you don't beat that guy, there will always be someone saying that you didn't beat that guy. So I know Pereira will be, but Pereira will be that guy. Like, if he's next, then he's next. That is it. There is no problem there.
Well, so did you hear what he said at the post?
What I'd like to say. No, I don't watch any. I really don't watch any of that anymore.
Sometimes I love it. Actually, I do. I watch it the morning after, and basically someone brought that up, and he said Ankalaev, this and that, whatever. I can't remember the exact question, but all Alex Pereira said when he picked up the microphone, he said one word, and the fucking the translator said anyone. That's all he said was anyone. And then they brought up Jamal Hill. He's like, Jamal Hill said this. He said, once you take out Yuri and I knock another head off, you're next. And all he said was okay. He just says like this, like the small, like it's like Bill Belichick. Like,
but it's the right thing to say, though. It's like, I've already beaten you. You're basically telling me that if you win, you're gonna call me out. Okay, cool. I'll be right there when you do that. That's all. Like it's perfect to what he like. That's just his. That's also just his like personality. It seems. It doesn't seem like he's very outgoing. But like he just has the perfect mentality for the type of fighting style he brings. Where he's just who's not scared to stand in front of that dude, because he has knockout power and he has just that quick twitch. Like just those calf kicks are unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Like Prochazka just didn't seem like he could deal with it in both of these fights, including the rematch last night. Right? Like he seemed like he still did not figure out how to deal with it. And I'm not saying he should have. I mean, he definitely should have if that was something he should have focused on. But as far as like it's not surprising he wasn't able to deal with it, because no one's been able to stop Pereira's calf kicks. They're so subtle. There's no tell, but they're so effective. Everyone he's fought, it's bothered, and it's a huge weapon. I wonder if it's almost like it's a weapon for his takedown defense. If he starts to weaken your lead leg, that's the first leg you're going to step off of for any type of explosive movement as far as a takedown or anything. So it's like, you see something like that, you're like, I wonder if that's like very more calculated to the takedown part of the whole game, Mm-hmm. It's almost like you kind of think that's probably what it. But then it's like, you just watch everything he does is so good. He sets you up real well by setting you up he punches plenty to the body and setting you up there, and that way you can set up not only as like a left hook, but also like a head kick. Like he just sets you up for so much within the fight that you're not even really. It's one of those things.
You're like
where
his puppet almost.
Chess and checkers. Yeah, it's like just you're playing two different games, and you don't even know. That's the scary part. You don't even know that he's setting you up, like, and he truly is. It truly is. It's unreal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we got a lot of fights to get to. Obviously, Alex Pereira. This isn't going to be the first or last time we talk about him.
No.
My God, this guy's got hopefully a long career ahead of him with a lot more fights, just like we saw last night. I'm a huge fan. I was a fan, but I'm a huge fan now of him, and I'm looking forward to all the fights. I hope he jumps into every pay-per-view card now. Why not? But co-main event. A lot of shit happened with the co-main event yesterday. And there had already been a lot of shit with the co-main event. So, for people that don't know, Diego Lopez is ranked number 14 in featherweight. And when Conor McGregor had to back off the card, he had a toe injury and he couldn't fight. They added Diego Lopez versus Brian Ortega for the co-main event to make the card a little bit better now that Conor's not on it. And that was 2 weeks' notice. And Brian Ortega is number 3, I believe, in the featherweight division. Yes. So that was a huge opportunity for David Lopez. When he got the call, he said, absolutely, yes, I'll take the fight. I'll be ready. Let's go. The day before the fight, Brian Ortega had a really hard time cutting weight. Diego Lopez was in bed at 145 right away in the next day. I guess Brian Ortega's team called, said they couldn't make weight. Diego Lopez agreed to fight Brian Ortega at 155. So they weighed in at 155 the next day. Totally fine. And then something happened with Brian Ortega within that 24 hours. Where the athletic commission, the athletic commission wouldn't let him fight because he had 103 fever, and I don't know if that was part of the weight cut issues or he's got other things going on, or I don't know, but he had to back out of the fight literally hours before the event started. So Dan Ige just happened to be in town, in shape, but he was heavy, so he's like, hey, and he's number 13, I believe, in featherweight. And he said, I'll fight him, but we got to do a catch weight. I'm at 165 right now. I can make 165. And fucking badass Diego Lopez goes, okay, I'll fight you at 165.
Yeah, sure.
So there's our co-main event hours before the event started. Diego Lopez versus Dan Ige, which is an awesome fight. I was actually pretty pumped. I mean, I'd rather see Brian Ortega, I think. I was really looking forward to that matchup. But, I mean, this is a great substitution, in my opinion. And the fight turned out to be great. Dan, what were your thoughts on this whole thing while it was going down?
Well, there's so much to unpack with that. You just hope Ortega's good. You hope everything's fine, because it seemed like he was probably dealing with something, it's probably minor, but all it takes is you just have some type of illness at the wrong time, especially when your body's not used to being exerted in the way he probably was when he ramped up. But it's just like, man, the respect you give to Lopez, like you said, just taking everything over and over and over, 3 different weight changes, 3 different opponents or whatever it was, and still to look really good. Against a guy like Dan Ige, who literally, he has legitimate knockout power, and he's good everywhere, and he was already in shape, because I'm not sure who he was supposed to fight, but he was supposed to fight in July, I think.
I think he said the 20th.
So he was 20th. So he was already like, you never even know. He might have been peaking. I don't know when these guys like normally peak in their training camp. But you figure he's only a few weeks out, say 3-4 weeks out from his fight, so he's probably in a pretty good spot. It was wild the way it happened, because I'm watching it like, Jim, you know how I watch these fights. I pay attention, man. I'm not paying attention, but I'm drinking. I'm high, and I'm watching. I'm like, am I being like, is there a prank going on? You see like Ige coming in, like, what the fuck is he doing here?
Yeah.
And then it was wild.
Oh, dude, so I had a friend over, and I really wanted to see Cub Swanson and Feely. So I watched that fight, and then I was like, you know what? Because we wanted to play darts downstairs. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, like, you know what? I want to watch the Pfeiffer fight, but I'd rather see the whole main card, so I'll take this fight off. We'll go play darts for 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is, before the main card starts. So I missed that fight. But, while I was downstairs, I come back upstairs, I check my phone, you're texting me. You go, Dan Ige's in the co-main event. He's like, and you're like, oh, well, I wanted to see Brian Ortega, but this is a great fight. And I was like, wait, what happened? What's going on? I go downstairs for 20 minutes, and now we have a different co-main event. This month, this card this month can't get any crazier. This is insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. What do you think? On 2 hours notice?
Yeah.
And he's always been a favorite of mine because he's so well rounded. He has knockout power. He has the ability to take shots, and he has ability to. He seems like he has the ability to come forward and make a fight no matter who he's fighting. So you knew what type of fight you were getting with him. Hopefully they can maybe rebook Lopez and Ortega, because now you figure, Lopez is going to sneak up a little more, and if Ortega wants that fight still, that'll be a cool one to rebook. But either way, Lopez is going to get a big name coming up, because you figure just the way he dealt with this week and a half, and passed everything with flying colors.
Yeah.
The sky's the limit for that dude, because he is so. He took a head kick right off just a shin right off his head at that point. I don't know if it's the first or second round. Do you remember?
It was the second round, yeah.
So, yeah, but didn't even look like it even affected him in any way.
Yeah. Well, this is another reason why I watch the post conferences, is because they both want to fight each other again at the Sphere. And Dana White was like, yeah, we can make that happen. I don't know if they're gonna, but both Dan Ige and Diego Lopez want to fight each other, or at least they both want to fight on the Sphere card. And there's a chance that they could do a rematch.
Either or is fine. You figure those two guys on the card, whether they fight each other or not, is good either way. I say maybe book them with separate opponents.
Yeah,
knowing that they'll always fight each other if something happens. So maybe give Lopez a bigger name, and then give Ige any name, because that's who Ige. He's already established himself in the UFC at that weight. So I feel like anyone. There's really very few names that don't make sense for him. He's kind of earned that right, especially figuring the top 10. If you're not going to take a fight against Dan Ige, then it's like, he's always going to be around as long as that dude is fighting.
Yeah, I was going to say, you could potentially both give them both, a top 10, 8, 9, 10, 11,
Sure.
And everybody be okay with that. Even though Dan Ige lost last night, it was a close fight, and I don't think anybody would be mad to give him a chance at the top 10 after taking 3 hours notice. This fight on 3 hours notice or 2 hours notice.
He's dangerous everywhere.
Yeah,
he's dangerous everywhere.
Fighter.
Yeah. So no, I agree. Then why not do that? See how it goes. If one falls out, then you always know you have that in your back pocket.
Yep.
To have a rematch between those two, because you saw the fight you had with the first of them, and I would think that it's even probably a good practice, even if you were if I were a fighter and if I lost a fight, regardless if I know I'm going to fight that good dude again, or if I know I have any type of just anything set up in the future with him, I'd want to watch that fight back and see what I did wrong, see how I could capitalize on things. So I feel like that would be probably the first thing that Ige would be doing. And he's watching how he can maybe even beat this guy. And then there's a possibility that he might even be able to fight him in the biggest card coming up in September. So,
well, I'll tell you what, man, if that fight was a 5-round fight, there's a good chance Dan Ige would have won that fight.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because he
why I
pretty much dominated that round 3.
He did. Which is why I always argue for those fights to be, why not have more of these crazy big name headline free card 5-rounders? Utilize the fact that it might be a free card, but utilize the fact that the main event is a 5-rounder. I think that's a big part of it. Mm-hmm. Which obviously this happens so quick, you can't really predict that. But there are some fights where you're like, it's great that this fight is the second fight on this pay-per-view, but I'd much rather see it next weekend headlining a free card, just knowing it'd be 5 rounds and knowing that like you said, one fighter seems to be maybe slowing down a little bit, or even not even the one seems to be slowing down a bit, but the other one seems to be picking up momentum. Like, that's the fight I want to see, 5 rounds.
Yep.
So, and you can kind of tell that Diego Lopez and Dan Ige was going to be one of those fights.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that the UFC could maybe capitalize off of more. Putting these big name fights again, that you just kind of have a feeling that they might require 5 rounds to kind of sort it out. Throw them as the main event of these free cards more often. I think, because you can throw any of these fights. Like, you even saw, like, we'll get into it, like Macy Chase on. How great that was awesome. You throw in a fight like that in the middle of the card, and like, you're making a pay-per-view there. So, and that was a fight that was relatively flying under the radar in a lot of ways. So,
well, before we get to that, let's talk about the next fight. Roman Dolidze defeats Anthony Smith by unanimous decision. What did you think of that fight?
Anthony Smith didn't really look good.
They both looked really flat.
Yeah, especially Anthony Smith. I understand there's a lot of opponent changes and all that, but I still do feel like if you're fighting a guy who's coming up in a weight that's lower than you, you still should hold some type of physical advantage, especially if you're a heavily grappler who wants to take it to the ground. I feel like you should be able to have some success doing that against a guy who's coming up from middleweight to light heavyweight into your division. That's 15 pounds in difference. Like, I don't know. I don't. It's hard to really be too much of a critic on someone who just took anyone at any time. Anthony Smith has always been that guy, so it's hard to really be critical. But I was kind of disappointed with his turnout. Not to say that I was impressed any other way. I just feel like Dolidze, I felt like when I saw him at the weigh-in, I was like, he doesn't look like a guy who's coming up. They look very similar. I felt like he looked bigger. He looked better to me. Mm-hmm. And then, like, you saw the fight happen, and I don't know. I wasn't impressed with the Anthony Smith that I saw last night. And that, like I said, that could be the 3 or 4 opponent changes. But it was just a very clear. It seemed like Dolidze won the first 2. Anthony Smith won the last round, and it was a pretty 29-28 clear cut. What did you think about that one?
Yeah, I thought the fight was pretty flat on both sides. The thing that shocked me the most was how happy Dolidze was now that he's a top 10 in both divisions.
Yeah, he kept saying it. That was kind of funny.
Dude, I don't think that matters if you look back at your performance. I think he doesn't
have name recognition.
Yeah, you have to have a great performance to be happy about. Like, your number on a list should not matter to you. I don't think it should matter. I get why that's exciting for the grand scheme of your career, maybe, but dude, he call out Khamzat Chimaev. I was like, dude, all right, yeah, good luck with that. Just
call out Khamzat. Yeah. Don't do all this other stuff. Just go, hey, listen, I hope he recovers well, like you said. Great, cool. And then be like, I want that fight either way, you pick. Something like that would be way better than what you said.
Yeah, but even if you're living on the high of you on these top 10 lists, none of that's going to help you when you get in the octagon with Khamzat Chimaev. Like, that's my point. Like, you need to be better. You need to not be so happy about lists and be focusing on all your happiness coming from your actual performance in the octagon. And I don't think he had anything to be happy about last night besides maybe the victory over a guy like Anthony Smith.
It's probably the name.
But it's just a victory. Like, it wasn't a finish. It wasn't a split decision, or was it unanimous? It was unanimous, but it was pretty close.
I think it was, honestly, not to say it was like it wasn't close, but it was pretty clear cut who won the first 2 and then who won the third. It just was pretty much very predictable. It was just a guy who had won 2 rounds and was on the safer side, and there was one guy that wasn't really trying to stop the fight. Like Anthony Smith wasn't really going for it, but he was clearly winning the round. So it's one of those fights where I was kind of disappointed twofold, especially when you hear the post-fight interview. I'm like, well, you don't really, I don't know. I just don't, like, I always look at it like, you and I aren't casual fans, but I always try to look at it on a casual fan basis. And most casual fans do not know who Roman Dolidze is.
Yeah.
And that's not disrespect. That's just, if you're going to be a top 10 fighter in 2 different weight classes, and very few people that are casual fans know who you are, that means that you haven't made much of an impact in your fights, like you had mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So
and I think there's
got to be something there.
And my point is, if you want that recognition, which I'm sure he does, then you're going to have to focus on what you do in the octagon to be able to beat those big name guys in the long run. You know what I mean? And I just don't think the performance I saw from him last night, I don't think he's going to do much. Well, if he performs like he did last night, there's not many people in the top 10 he's going to be able to beat, unfortunately.
I've always thought he was slow. I've always thought he was slow at both weights.
Yeah.
At 205 and 185, where I feel like that's an issue. I feel like if you feel like everything he does is, there's certain people that are just way faster to that point. And he's never going to be high championship level as a result, because I just don't think I just think there are different people out there that just get to the point quicker. And not to say he can't change that, but
I hope he does.
I don't. Yeah, you always root for that, because if you see that, you're like, wow, what a change in something. Like, but I don't. I don't foresee it happening, because you even you just look at a guy like that, and then you watch a guy like who would be a perfect. It was on this exact card. There you go. How about Joe Pfeiffer and him? At 185, Dolidze and Joe Pfeiffer. I think Dolidze gets stopped in that fight, because Joe Pfeiffer looked like he was pissed off that he had a bad performance.
Yeah, he did.
We can get to that, but that also shows you the difference in potential there. I think Joe Pfeiffer has untapped potential that he can get into later in his career because of that power. He has that's quick twitch there with his ability to stop people. I didn't see that from Dolidze. I think if Pfeiffer fights Anthony Smith last night, Anthony Smith gets stopped by Pfeiffer too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, you see a difference in some of these athletes. That's all I would say. And then even to go as dramatic and as crazy as we'd say, like he's not beating these championship names. So, like, I know there are different weights, but technically they're not, because you want to brag about being top 10 in both weight classes. I got news for you. There's nothing you're going to do to Alex Pereira. At 205, there's nothing you're going to be able to do to him, judging by what I saw last night. He's going to kick the shit out of that lead leg, and he's probably going to knock you out with that lead hook or whatever else shot presents itself. Yeah. But, like, he's so good at what he does, it's not even hard to predict it. And he's going to ding you up with calf kicks. He's going to hit you with that check left hook, and he's going to probably land a head kick or two.
And no matter no matter who you are, what fighter you are, what weight class you're in, those champions, those people should always be your reference of how good you have to be. Yep.
They're your barometer. So they're your measuring stick.
There you go. Yep. Someone like Dolidze, if he wants to be top in 205, he should have been out there watching in the second row, or watching in the back on a TV. And I'm sure he was. Maybe he was. But
Sure.
yeah, we got a lot of fights to get to. Let's get to the next one. One you
Hit me.
mentioned already, Macy Chiasson. I think it's Chiasson.
Chiasson, either way.
And Myra
I don't want to
Bueno
besmirch
Silva.
your name. I don't want to besmirch your name. You're a beast. Like the way she.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Very dangerous.
That was a horrible cut, man.
Very bad cut.
Dang.
Props to Bueno Silva for being like, it's nothing. I'm like, ma'am, you look like you got hit with a hatchet.
Yeah, we can see your skull.
Yeah. So, I understand, but
and that was a great fight. That was a close fight.
It was a good fight. It was. Yeah. It really was. But that's always my argument when I always talk to you. I don't say it as just to say it, but like elbows are game changers in these fights, especially like a 5-round fight. But like you saw how that changed the whole complexion of the fight. As soon as that landed, did you even see like Chiasson's like kind of smirk on her face? She looked like the Grinch.
Yeah.
After he stole Christmas, when she landed that elbow, she kind of had that like, oh, I gotcha. Like she could see it. Like that was a bad.
Yeah, that was a bad cut. She was holding her mouth after too, because she was on top of her, and she was like.
She took the last can of Who Hash, Jim, and she landed. She landed that shot, but there was one in PFL like that too. I believe, yeah, PFL. Brandon Lockane. Have you heard that name?
Sounds familiar.
He was in UFC. But he landed a head kick that landed a very similar forehead cut like that. That just looked like an axe wound. You're like, Jesus. But she looked great though even before that.
Yeah, Chiasson got one of the bonuses as well. So obviously Dana White
took her shots
well too.
But that's kind of expected because Bueno Silva was really really well rounded, and she does throw good shots on her feet in her own right, and she did tag Chasen a few times. But man, she really just kind of hung in there and really made that count. Because once you, like I said, that was one of the moments in the card last night where I was just laughing, like, wow, she really did, like the way her smile went, and it really literally curled, like she looked evil. Like, oh, I got you. Like I was like, oh.
Yeah.
But no, props to her. That well-deserved bonus. Well-deserved. She looked great. She's a problem for people because of just her physical stature and her size.
Yeah. Lanky. Yep.
Very much so. Yeah. If you come into your own at that, and you kind of like, I feel like a lot of those fighters, especially in that type of weight class and that type of frame there, if you use your frame to your best of your ability first, and don't even think about anything else, and then expand from that, you can become just such a dangerous person to deal with.
Yeah.
If you make that your prime, just your prime, what you're trying to do most is make your physical advantages show, and she has a ton of those. So if she can keep that in that type of frame, as far as maybe make it more at distance where she's not, it's more coming on speed. She seemed like she dictated that entire fight for the most part. She took her shots, but
yeah, because those physical advantages, she's always going to have those. You know,
always.
If you make that second nature in your game, you'll never lose that. You'll always have that as part of your game, and you'll always have that advantage over the fighters that don't.
I mean, she's a 5'11" female 135 fighter.
That's crazy, yeah.
Very few of those. Because that's like pretty much my height. I'm like 6 feet, 5'11". Like that's a big frame to deal with, especially when you said like throwing those elbows and those type of shots, and not even just to cut. Like she's a big fighter, so she's throwing those to hurt as well. So you really don't even know what that did to a fighter like Bueno Silva on top of the cut, because the natural inclination which she had was to continue fighting, and you got to give respect to that. And that's the type of stuff you want to see from these type of fighters, but at that level. But it was a good stoppage.
Yeah,
it was the right time to stop that. those are the type of cuts you want to stop it off.
And like you said, a bonus, well-deserved. Chasson, I can't wait to see her fight again. But then we had the opening fight of the card, which had a lot of hype behind it. Two guys that were very confident in their skills. And it actually was a really good fight. And this is probably one of the more exciting fights of the night. Not just because of the hype, but because they were pretty evenly matched in a way too, which I loved. In the fight I'm talking about was Ian Garry and Michael Venom Page. What were your thoughts on the fight?
It was a very good fight. You figure, like, hindsight being 2020, you kind of watching that fight and be like, oh, you know what? No shit. Ian Garry took that fight to the ground, tried to use jiu-jitsu more and more often. Now that he was training with Charles Oliveira and Damian Maia and those guys down there. Because I think he was just thinking Brazilian, like, strikers. But you kind of forget that, you forget the name that's in front of that jiu-jitsu. It's Brazilian. So these guys all, like, so I did not realize. I knew Oliveira was in his camp there. I was like, oh, it's awesome because you're gonna get a full rub off of that guy. His striking and jiu-jitsu is phenomenal. But then when you hear about Damian Maia, you're like, okay, wow, so that's different. That's like, now we're talking about a guy who can, as he goes into these 5-round fights, he's gonna become better and better just with simple control. If you control a guy for a round or two in these 5-round fights, it's huge. With the striking he has, the ability he has, the ability to take a shot, because he took some shots against Venom Page that we saw, like, and that was another thing. Like, I didn't agree with Ian Garry thinking he was going to be the faster fighter. I understand there's ego there, there's a confidence there, but I wouldn't like to carry that going in because it clearly was not the case. Michael Venom Page was clearly the quicker, faster fighter, especially in the striking sequences. But it didn't seem to matter because of the ability to grapple and the ability to take it to the ground and get us back twice in the fight. And Ian Garry showed an entire tool set, which was cool. Which is different than, like, the reason why I don't like when I don't like grappling as what's going on, what I'm watching, is when it seems more panicked and more like I need this, as opposed to, oh, they don't want me to do this, so I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Like GSP would do. It's like, oh, you don't want me to take you down, but I'm going to take you down. As opposed to, oh, I don't like the stand up right now, so I'm going to take you down. Like, I don't like that as much because then I feel like you're not as well rounded. Where I feel like there were very few times GSP was ever in danger. There's one time when he got rocked, but, like, when he's on the feet, he's in control. Yeah. He's keeping you off with his jab, and he tells you where he wants you to go in the stand-up realm for the most part. And then he'll take you down at will. That's the only reason why I don't like that. When fighters are like, oh, I need the takedown. I'm like, you shouldn't need it. You should be like, well, this is what I should do right now. That's how I look at it. And he kind of did that. He really just kind of, there was no time where he seemed seriously hurt. He did get tagged in the stand-up I shouldn't say quite a bit, a few times by Page, but I mean, that's going to happen against a guy like that because that's what he does, and he's so unique. So no matter what you say going up to that fight, that dude is going to be something that you'd never seen before.
Yeah.
Just not even the speed, just what he's telling you, what he's giving you. He's just he's an entire different puzzle than anyone at 170, which makes him so dangerous for anyone who can get out of there, especially out of their own headspace and out of their own game plan, which you could tell Ian Garry did not come out of his game plan.
Yeah.
Which shows you really what he brings. He brings championship promise at that weight. So it's cool. Sorry, I went a little tangent.
No,
you're a little
good,
ramble. Yeah. What do you think, Jim? About that fight?
I will say that first round and the sequence of the takedown and taking the back, and he had that rear naked choke deep.
He did.
From when he took him down to getting that rear naked choke, that was some clean jiu-jitsu. Like clean, like calm. He knew what he was doing. He looked really, really good. And then I think the second round, like you said, Venom Page is just, he's an enigma sometimes to a lot of, stand-up fighters. And like, I don't know, there's only so much you can do unless you're at his level. And with the speed. Yeah. Even Ian Garry at the end, I think he said something like, "Oh, I didn't know you were that fast," or something like that. Maybe he was joking, maybe he wasn't. I don't know, but he was definitely faster than Ian Garry was. But I think it was a really, really close fight. I think it was really good. But I just that my favorite part of the fight, just because of how Ian Garry, like the whole sequence in the first round of taking his neck was like so perfect to me. And I was like, how do you not finish the fight? Like, you have it under the chin. You have his back. I don't know what happened there, but like,
I think he should have as well.
He had it. He had it.
Especially when you have a guy who's not as much defending as when there was a point where Venom Page, where Garry almost got the choke. Page was like, he was throwing strikes. It's like, that's the last thing you want to do, man. Control the wrist, control. Get out of it.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be throwing strikes when someone has your back in a body triangle. That's different than even having your back. Like, he had 100% control. So I agree. I thought it was going to be done. When he had him, I really thought he had him.
Dude, if he finished it right there, it would have been chef's kiss. It would have been perfect. That would have been the best way to do it. Who knows what we'd be saying right now? It'd be a totally different story.
In the long run, it could be good, though.
Well, it'd be good.
Get a little extra run.
I think
it's a guy like that.
Better for Venom Page. Now you know things you got to work on, because he clearly didn't. He didn't know what he was doing necessarily on the ground and defense-wise, jiu-jitsu-wise, all that. Like, he has a lot to learn there. So yeah, I think for Venom Page, it's going to turn out good and help him in the long run. And Ian Garry, like, I agree. I think he looks at these fights as a puzzle, and he's always looking for things. He's always trying to, watch tape, figure out his fighters, the opponents, and all that. So I'm looking forward to see what they give him next. And
he's so well-rounded.
He's potentially like 2-3 fights away from a title shot. So
100%.
Yeah,
he's so well-rounded, because it's like, you figure he might not. Maybe one of his bigger weaknesses might be offensive wrestling, but he doesn't really have to use that, because he's not really. He keeps that jiu-jitsu in his back pocket in case he needs it against guys that aren't strong against wrestling per se.
Mm-hmm.
I.e. what we saw last night. But it's different with a guy who has that type of striking pedigree. Because Ian Garry, that dude can do everything. And he has true power in all shots that he throws, and you see the difference in these guys that have been training him. And he's almost like one of the new era's MMA version of Rory McDonald, where he kind of seems like he came up in just MMA in general.
Yeah.
Like he knows MMA, right? Like,
yeah, it's a good comparison.
There's really nothing. Yeah, that's what Rory was. You saw Rory come up and you're like, this dude's so good. And you're like, oh, okay. So he just started just training MMA. He has no real background. So he has nothing he has to lean off of, which means he has no real weakness, because everything's going to be a strength. When you're just learning like that, and he's a sponge, and you can tell a guy like Ian Garry just wants to learn everything. That's why he relocated himself to a place like Brazil. That's why he took himself out of a comfort zone, found a new, he might have felt a family vibe there, which is great. But, that's what he's looking for. I think he wants something that's going to take him out of it and put, he's going to turn all of his weaknesses into strength. So he's like, oh, I'm a striker. All right, so I don't want anyone to deal with me wrestling. And if they do take me down, I got jiu-jitsu to hang out on my back there. He can do everything.
Yeah.
There's really no position he's uncomfortable with And you saw he take a shot. He could take a shot last night.
Definitely could take a shot. Yeah.
Man, he definitely can. Because so there was one particular blitz right hand where I was like, oh, that might have knocked out
Yeah, I
a
know what you're
lot
talking
of guys
about,
at once. Yes, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was in the middle of the fight. I was like, I think it was the second round. Like that would have been the shot where I think some people might have fell face forward. But he's a special talent. He's a special talent. I'm excited to see what's next for him.
Yeah. Well, with that said, let's pick just a couple of the prelim fights if you want. Obviously,
I'll give you 2.
You want to do 2?
I'll give you 2.
All right.
I mean, if we're just doing 2, I'll give you 2 easy.
All right, let's do 2. Let's just do 2. The whole prelims were great though. So if you haven't watched them, you should go watch them. They were the whole card, top to bottom. Besides, I would say 1 or 2 fights were all awesome fights. But let's talk about Payton Talbott.
There you go. That was one of them.
Yeah, let's start with that one because that
unreal.
Yeah.
And that's what's so cool about a guy like that, who's doing what he's doing, and then it gets outshadowed by, like rightfully so, but it gets outshadowed by the people on the bigger parts of the main card. So people aren't really talking about what Payton Talbott just did last night, which I think also favors him in a way.
And Dana White even said that matchup was supposed to be a test for him.
Yes, it was. The dude was 12-2. He's a very tough fighter. He's very good in his own right. And even, do you see that video I sent you of Payton Talbot putting a video out there of like how to beat me?
Yeah.
Like what you should do.
YouTube, what do they call it? A tutorial.
Like, does any, like, you had mentioned it kind of a little bit. Does anyone have more of a Ted Bundy MMA vibe than him?
I know, right?
Like he's that man. Yeah.
He's so, last night I texted you and I said, he's like eerily calm throughout this whole thing. And it's really weird and odd. And you were like, well, maybe he's a serial killer on the side or something like that.
I'm telling you, man, the way he is special. He just looks phenomenal, man. Like even like, I know you could say it's just 19 seconds, but it's like, like you said, that you have to understand the level of talent that's in front of him. That's not a can, like they would say in like boxing, where they'd throw a can in front of someone and they knock them on the first round. There you go. That's not impressive to me at all. That's not what that was at all.
No.
That dude has been around, and he's a dangerous fighter in his own right. So like when you saw that happen, I was just like, this dude is just absolutely for real. I can't wait to see what's next for him. And then you look at, even if Sean O'Malley continues to be the champion, Sean O'Malley's like maybe 5'11" or so. Talbot's 5'10". He's not small.
Yeah.
He's a big 135 or 2. He's the future of the division.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we've been talking about him for a couple months now.
That fight's going to happen now, sooner or later. It's going to happen sooner as opposed to later.
Dude, he should just book another fight right now. Why not?
Bro, he might be next after Merab.
If he, I don't think that's too fast.
He might knock out 2 people.
Hold on, let me crack this beer.
Crack that.
There we go.
Good.
All right.
That was good.
Sorry, go ahead.
He might beat 2 people within the time that O'Malley beats. Because you figure, okay, that's perfect. You won in 19 seconds. You're unscathed.
Oh, you're saying just in terms of how his turnaround could be.
Yeah, the timing. So he could get someone. He gets someone in the top 15 now, quick. If he starches them, he's like, come on, bro. Like,
yeah.
So I'm just saying he's right there.
He should try.
It might take 3, but
he should. What's today? Almost July.
Tomorrow's July 1st.
Actually, it's July. Yeah. Well, no, you can get on one more, but he should do one more and then maybe try to get on that November card.
Sure.
You know, because all these, and that's something you were talking about earlier, which, you know, they should utilize their 5-round fights for fight nights and stuff like that to put some of these big names to headline those fight nights, right? I think a big reason well, for obvious reasons, but UFC tends to find their small niche group of like who they believe are superstars, and they kind of try to keep their superstars on the big cards. Like, for example, like a Conor McGregor card. Like, you know, that's you're gonna see other superstar fighters on that card because of their what they bring in energy. Could they headline a UFC fight night? Absolutely, and it would be awesome. But it's more. I think sometimes it's more about you know, the face of the company and the superstars than it is about headlining Kentucky or Louisville, Kentucky.
I get
you know, and they have plenty of those fighters that can do that still. Like, well, yeah, I think I'm not articulating it well, obviously, but I think you know what I mean. Does that make sense?
No, I definitely see what you mean.
Like Garry, MVP. Like MVP, no matter who he fights, at least right now, is not going to headline a UFC fight night. Garry's not going to headline a UFC fight night. He's always going to be on a pay-per-view card. Like, I think Diego Lopez is now one of those people. You know, I think if you talked about this 2 months ago, Diego Lopez could headline a UFC fight night. But now, like, he's past that. Like, it doesn't make sense to put Diego Lopez on a card other than a pay-per-view card. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. He's definitely one of those names where you would.
I think Payton Talbott's one of those guys.
See, the only reason why I would say for certain names, it would just be for the 5-round capability where I just think the UFC should utilize that more. That's all. Like that Ige Lopez one was a really good example where you're looking at like, oh, that fight, no matter if you just heard that fight was announced, you would just go, oh, I hope that's 5 rounds. That's just one of those fights. You'd be like, oh, I want that to be, just knowing the potential there. But I totally get what you're saying, because Garry and Page was perfect where it was. And it's hard to predict like where these fights would be their best suited. I just feel like there's certain ones where I feel like especially if it's like a ranked, even like the Bueno Silva Chase on.
Yeah.
I feel like you can always throw a fight in there that's going to give you what you want for the pay-per-view, as opposed to maybe throwing that on a main event where you have the 5 rounds. So if you ever do have the event, which it happens a lot, where both fighters are up 2-2, it just happens so often where it's close, or even if the fighter's up 3-1 and the other fighter's still dangerous, like, it just adds so much more excitement knowing that the fight's going 5 full. But like I said, that's more like Monday morning quarterback, easy to say in the moment after the fact. But the point is, like, Diego Lopez looked great. Ige didn't, only grew his stock. Talbot's just through the roof at this point. Like, it worked out well for the UFC last night.
Yeah.
But I was just kind of like nitpicky as far as certain ones. I don't know. I don't know what do you think? Maybe Talbot. I don't know who he has. I don't know if anyone is next for him. But how about like a guy like
anybody?
Petr Yan.
I want to see him fight anybody. I just want to see.
Petr Yan would be cool.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I don't know if that's too big of a jump right away, but
I think this dude's ready, man. He's just like,
I say go for it. He's not going to turn it down. You better not turn it down.
He won't.
Take whatever comes, man. Like, I say, get in there as fast as you can. Take one as soon as possible. Try to get on that Sphere card if you can. Why not? If it's possible, Get out there. Go do it.
That's what I'm saying. You could fast track yourself if you have a guy like O'Malley fighting Merab, and let's just say, given the
especially
what
if
we're talking about,
especially if O'Malley's going to be on that card, get on the next
yeah.
O'Malley card, and
let's
then
say O'Malley
like
stops Merab. Let's say O'Malley stops Merab, and let's just say the second. And earlier in that card, Talbott fights Peter and he beats him. Then you're kind of looking at like Talbott, where it's like he's right there. Maybe one more win, but he's right. Would you really even argue? Because Peter already fought a guy like O'Malley. You already know where they're at.
Yeah. I think the point what you're making is when you have a performance like you did last night, you use that to your advantage to boost yourself in the rankings, to get to, everyone has the same goal. Everyone's got the same goal. They want to be champ. Okay, well, if I can use the performance I did last night to leap a couple people, then so be it. And then you just got to keep proving yourself, proving that you deserve to be there, and you'll get to the pinnacle, to your, no pun intended, because we're on the Pinnacle podcast, but you'll get to the top of the mountain a lot quicker than you thought you would. And then you can make a lot more money, and then you can enjoy yourself, and you can make a life for yourself, and you can, do whatever you want to do. But let's, there's only two more things I want to talk about. We're just over an hour
real quick, Jim, sorry.
Yep.
Real quick, that Talbot thing, man, 10, 15 seconds into that fight, like the beginning of the fight, when you land that shot, all you did was you just feinted a jab and threw a right hand.
Yeah.
And that right hand landed and you knocked that dude down and you finished the fight.
Yeah.
That's all you did. It wasn't like you threw this like, oh my God, he threw this crazy crane kick and landed in 19 seconds. No, he threw very fundamental jab and then threw the right hand that landed, and that dropped him like a sack of potatoes, Jim. So that's the reason why I think this dude's something different. There's no fluke there. Mm-hmm. He's just he's in the right spot, to the right shot, and just closed the show beautifully. Like, I think he's a different level than most of these guys. And I think it's athletically. He has a different reaction. He's meant to, there's certain guys that are just like, they're meant to be in whatever they're doing. And I think he's that guy.
Yeah.
This comes natural to him. I don't know if that's because he has people in his freezer, but he's like, I always say that out of respect. Like, he's becoming one of my favorite fighters because he's just like, there's no trash talk. He's just stoic and just super athletic and just a name to watch. So I don't think we can understate that, because I think in a year or two, we could easily be seeing him being the champion at 135, like, without a doubt.
Well, you heard it here first. We'll see.
Real deal.
I agree.
The real deal. But sorry, where were we going to go?
Well, something we definitely have to touch on, and maybe we should have brought this up earlier, because now we're an hour in, and if anybody does listen to this, I don't know if they get this far, but Michelle Waterson Gomez.
Yes.
The karate hottie, has announced that she will be retiring, and it was really sad, man. Like, she couldn't even talk at first. She broke down, and we've been watching her for a long time, and she's always been, she's always been game, dude. Like, she's always ready to go, and she was ready to go last night. It didn't work out for her in the end. She was fighting a really tough chick, and but goddamn, man, she's one of those ladies to remember. She was one of the first, just like just I don't know. It's funny when you find a girl fighter who's really attractive, but she's just as ruthless in the octagon as she is beautiful. You know what I mean? It's like Paige Van Zandt, we should mention, did slap fighting this past weekend and won. She's another one.
She won this.
She won, yeah. And she's always game too. Like, I put Michelle Waterson in the same boat. Just a fucking hardcore, like, really talented, great woman fighter who's done a lot, who's beat some of the best,
pioneer.
And yeah,
the sport
I would say arguably a
for
pioneer.
women's MMA especially.
Yeah.
She was in Invicta. She was in Invicta, and just like you said, she's just beautiful, just like a beautiful person inside out. Like the post fight interview was crazy. Like just it was awesome the way she was talking about how all these people on her side have always been in her in her corner, and now it's like her turn to return the favor. It's like there's a beautiful post fight. You could even hear Rogan getting a little choked up there. Like it was a nice moment for a fighter that was well deserved, win or loss. Like you said, Jillian Robinson looked great. She's just such a strong, grappling based, heavy, super control.
She was really impressive.
She's just, dude. I mean, she's her mentor is Dean Thomas. She's just phenomenal on the ground, man. With control and submissions, and if her striking continues to improve, she's a problem no matter who she fights because of that ground game she can bring someone. But like you said, Michelle Waterson Gomez, nothing but respect, absolute legend, pioneer of the sport. A lot of fighters that you're probably watching now, and you're going to continue to watch, that they might have watched her fight, and that's what made them become or want to become fighters in the first place. So she's one of those type of fighters, the Ronda Rousey, the Holly Holmes, the Amanda Nunes, Shevchenko, Joanna, Weili, there's so many names now in women's MMA. It's far ahead of other sports that have had a lot longer of a time to have these names. Yeah. And I think women's MMA has probably surpassed almost all of them, other than the big ones. You got your tennis names and huge, those are different. But as far as some of these other major sports, they don't really have these names that are household. Where as far as any guy's willing to watch these women fight at any time, I feel.
Absolutely. I said it last night to two of the people I had over, because they're not familiar with the sport. I said there's a lot of times, especially back in the day, where the woman fight was the best fight on the card, hands down.
Very much so.
Yeah, you might not think, being a new fan or whatever, you might be like, oh, we got two women here. I'm like, no, tune in, because these girls are going to throw down, and it literally could take fight of the night. So I'm always, especially, I mean, I know more of the names, obviously, but I always look forward to the women fights. I don't necessarily think it's great when they bust their faces up and, all that, but I mean, hey, why not? If they want to get out there and they want to fight and they want to show how strong and talented they are, I say go for it. And they're always great, man. Especially Michelle Waterson. She was always great, always. And she was pretty well-rounded. She was always well-rounded. She gave these girls a run for their money.
Oh, yeah. Even if she wasn't someone who would go for submissions per se herself as much, she was always someone who defended well.
Yeah.
She'd always find herself in good scrambles and get out of things, and just an absolute legend. You don't want to take it away from Robertson. She had a great performance. But that's kind of what happens when you fight someone like that who's on their last fight. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And I think she would even concede that herself, because she seems like just a great competitor in mixed martial arts in her own right. So she would give that her own respect, and she'll let that performance speak for itself. But but I mean, even you had so to speak on women's MMA, you got after our Independence Day break here, we have 2 straight free cards that are headlined by women's fights.
Yep.
We'll get into, but the other fight I would name on the prelims. So we mentioned that one, mainly that we got into, which was Payton Talbott, and then I would say you have to talk about Joe Pfeiffer if we're talking about 2.
Yeah. Yep.
Just the way it was, just again against a guy. Was it Andre Barral? How do you say his last name? Barral?
Yeah, I think so.
He's a UFC veteran. He's been around. He's beat UFC talent. and Pfeiffer just goes in and dusts him. It makes it look easy. And it kind of looked like that fight when you come off a loss. So, like I said, Joe Pfeiffer, you can give him anyone at this point. It'd be kind of interesting to see who's next for him. But what was the one I was talking about? Even if you threw that out to him, let's see. So if we're talking last card, what I was talking about was Roman Dolidze. So if Roman Dolidze wants that fight, why not do that? that might be a perfect next fight, because Dolidze, in my opinion, doesn't really, like, I understand he was like, I'm top 10 in this, I'm top 10 in that. There's most people that the casuals don't really know the name per se, because he's been in the UFC. He's tough. He's tough. I'm not saying anything, but he isn't. You're not winning the way in Payton Talbott is, where people are like, can't wait to see who you're matched up against next. So I feel like a fight like that would make sense, where you have a guy who, Joe Pfeiffer, is just sky's the limit for him. So if Dolidze beats a guy like that, then that only adds to what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I feel like that could be a kind of a nice fight, but it'd be kind of interesting to see who both get, because Pfeiffer could get even a bigger name after that win, because he's just, he's another one who I just feel like the power he has. I know it's just punching a stupid thing, but if you beat Francis Ngannou's record on something, who's a heavyweight, that means something to me. It means you hit pretty hard if you're a middleweight and you're beating a heavyweight's punch on something, regardless of what it is.
And
but
Pfeiffer
I would like to see him.
Pfeiffer got one of the performance bonuses last
night.
He
did, yep, he did. I'm sure Ige hopefully he got something. 50K Ige. I know he didn't on the record there, but the UFC took care of him.
Yeah, I'm sure.
This man took the fight in zero notice, so.
Or imagine Pfeiffer and Michael Pereira.
I'm fine with that. That sounds great
awesome too.
And maybe Pfeiffer would rather a guy who was in his division for sure, whereas opposed to Dolidze, which, I mean, do whatever you want. If it makes sense for you to kind of linger in both divisions and take fights in both and try to feel it out, I mean, by all means. But maybe Pfeiffer would be like, I'd rather someone more established at 185 that's going to stay there.
Yeah.
That could be something too, which would that name will make sense. So, like I said, I'm always looking forward to. I try not to speculate too much. I just kind of like think in my head, and then usually you're almost never right. But when you find out the name, you're like, oh, I'm happy with that. So like, there's a reason why they do these jobs for a reason. The matchmakers are just incredible. So,
they keep us watching for sure.
Dream job. Talk about a dream job, Jim. That would be.
Hey, apply.
I'd put in as many hours. I'd put in as many hours as possible for that job. That would be the best job.
I know, right?
You pay me whatever.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because it's not work. It is not work. So.
And we should give props to them right now. I mean, you already are, but they do an incredible job. Obviously, last night was an amazing card, and we enjoyed watching it. We can't wait to see what some of these guys have going on next. One thing I did want to mention in the post press conference thing with Dana White, they asked him about the Sphere because that was a big thing this week. And they mentioned, oh, did you happen to see the NHL draft and what they did with it? And did any of your team get to go there and check it out? He's like, yeah, I saw that they did like the whole draft list up and down. They used the whole Sphere to use the draft list. He's like, let me tell you this. What we're doing over there, that's like children playing with crayons. That's what he said. He's like, no bullshit. And he said, he's like, I don't want to give too much away because we're doing a whole documentary on the whole thing. But he said, we're doing a whole thing for Mexican independence. He's like, what I think about Mexican fighters and Mexican people in general and how hard they work and how they're so selfless and they like, he had a whole thing. He's like, the whole thing is set up so that we talk about Mexican history, people in Mexican culture now and Mexican culture in the future. This whole thing is like, it's a whole thing. And then someone asked him what we talked about yesterday was, how are you going to translate this to TV? And he's like, great question. He said, normally for a UFC event, we have one truck that does like all the production, right? He's like, for the Sphere, we're going to have 4 trucks. And we're going to have one director, just one director, to figure out how to visually show what they're playing on the Sphere to the people at home. So he's like, not only is this going to be a crazy event in live and in person, but it's going to be one of the best sporting events to watch at home as well. So he's like, no bullshit. He's like, this is never going to be replicated because no one's crazy enough to spend the amount of money that we're spending to do this.
We're going.
Oh, God, we got to go. He said, I'll also guarantee that this is the largest gate ever.
We're going.
We have to go.
So, that's it. We're going.
Gotta go. That's it.
No, it's set in stone. If I get tickets, we're going. So, even like that, just that little promo they showed you, that little,
oh my God.
Just that, you're like, wow, even just that. You're like, just imagine being there live.
Yeah.
And the main card's about to start. And you just see that, like,
yeah.
Like it's like, even in my dumb little brain, when they said 4 cameras, I'm like, they'll get 4 dimensions.
No,
gonna be
4
trucks.
4 trucks of 4 production 4D, trucks.
4D production, dude. I'm gonna see in 4D. No, but it's gonna be one of those things where it's honestly, MMA live always. I mean, I should say combat sports in general, but let's go MMA. MMA in general live is one of the best things you can watch live. In my opinion, because of the energy and the atmosphere in the arena. Yeah. There's something different there.
Absolutely.
Where you're watching the fight and like you're feeling something different than as opposed to if you were watching a normal sporting event. And I don't even know how to describe it other than that. It's one of those things you would have to be there and experience.
You just have to go check it out. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And it's like, because I've been there where people don't even really like it as much. And they're like, oh, I felt something. I'm like, well, you didn't even care about this. And you felt something. So there's something there to that. And this is going to be at a different level. So no, we're definitely gonna go. Like you said, it doesn't matter where we sit because it really. I mean, look at the arena. Yeah. It doesn't matter where you sit. So we're gonna sit anywhere. But no, we're going. I'll sign up for some type of thing and we'll figure it out. We got to make it happen. Yeah, hell yeah. So we'll make it work. Between the two of us, we'll figure it out.
I'm going to buy my plane ticket next week, I think.
Oh, nice. Then I'll do the same.
Just because they're pretty cheap right now.
Get one out of the way.
Yeah.
Just get it out of the way. Yep.
Yeah, and you don't want them to go up. So we'll talk about that.
So. Which that way it kind of puts us in a spot where we're more committed to it. Then I'll be hounding that goddamn pre-sale. So.
Oh yeah. They're gonna be expensive. That pre-sale will
be like, he's calling again. You know, that's what we're gonna say. He's calling again, asking.
Yeah, they're gonna be expensive, but the flights aren't that bad, and the hotels aren't bad. So I don't mind paying more for the tickets. We got to be there, man. This is like WrestleMania to me.
Sure, but that's what's cool too. So like, people will be like, "Oh, well, what if you don't get tickets? That would suck." I'm like, okay, yes, that would suck. But if we do book the trip in general, that area is going to be insane for this event.
Yeah. We'll just go to a bar.
Watch. Exactly. That is as good of a plan B as you could imagine, really. Yeah. And I'm not saying it as if I want that to happen. No, we have a clear aim of what we're trying to do, but
we'll figure it out. I'm sure we'll go.
If we end up just at a bar for it, or if we end up at a place where maybe we could win tickets, Jim, the possibilities are endless, Jim. We can really, plus we're gonna make cards for this podcast. We're gonna be handing them out. I'm gonna be out I'm going to be out in the streets of Vegas
in a
as if I was handing out, as if I was handing out call girl cards for people later. I'm like, here, listen, call this lady later. So come to your hotel. So, do whatever. So clean your apartment, wink, wink.
Yeah, and then they call the number. They call the number, and it automatically subscribes them to the podcast.
The roundabout way,
Oh, so, damn. I guess I got to listen now.
Yeah, right. No, but we're going for sure. We'll if you're gonna book it next week, I will too, and we'll that'd be awesome because we can. Like I said, what I would do if anyone's listening now, I'll what I want to do if we're gonna do the Sphere, I'll buy some shirts on UFC.com that I bring with me to Vegas, and we'll do some like Q&A shit. Yeah. And we'll just walk around and be like, hey, we have this podcast. We'll give them the card. And if you answer this question correctly, you get this shirt. If not, go fuck yourself. But but like we'll do like stuff like that where like, even if you answer it wrong, we'll give you something, but it won't be the shirt because we gotta give it to people who get the. There's gotta be levels to it, but we'll figure something out.
Yeah.
But I have ideas for that, so I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be very. But I mean, Jesus, July and August in general, before we even get there, is insane.
Yeah.
So
we got a Manchester card coming up. Yeah.
Brother, this summer in MMA has been absolutely wild so far. Yeah. And we haven't even scratched the surface.
This is great, man.
You got a Manchester, you got a Perth. The UFC is just taking over, bro.
Yeah. And in terms of, so we got a break in the fights next week. We're trying to come up with something different. I don't want to say anything just yet, but we will have an episode next week, whether it be a podcast or some kind of video, something to release that we'll let you know about. For anyone still listening, thank you again for your support. Follow us on Instagram or our YouTube. Both usernames are at Pinnacle_combat. And we'll see you next week, man. Thanks, Dan. Always good talking to you.
Always good to talk to you, brother. It was a great card, and just like I said, we're just scratching the surface this summer. This summer is looking amazing for MMA.
Yeah.
UFC in particular. So we have just a ton to prepare for, a ton to get ready for. It's exciting.
All right, everybody. Peace.
Peace. See you.